Mars Attacks was released in December 1996, and it was labelled as a box office bomb, with it failing to captivate an audience. This tale of a Martian invasion, shown through the perspective of a vast range of characters, seemed to cause confusion. It looked like a special effects spectacular, but at the same time, the effects and action looked really cartoonish, like something from a Looney Tunes cartoon. It presented itself as a comedy, but many felt the jokes were more awkward and quirky rather than laugh-out-loud material, with many wondering where is the punchline. It had a huge lineup of stars, but most of them get killed off rather unceremoniously. It is said that Warner Bros. Was so disappointed with Mars Attacks, according to Mars Attacks writer Jonathan Gems, in part it's because of Mars Attacks that they cancelled Tim Burton's upcoming Superman Lives project, with Mars Attacks denting his up until that point very successful track record with making movies, with Burton himself supposedly even thinking about never making another movie again. However, over the years, fans of Mars Attacks have defended this movie, with it being believed that Mars Attacks was just a misunderstood movie, probably the most misunderstood of Burton's filmography, and that the movie is actually a masterpiece. It's just a bizarre movie of bizarre oddities, but still a masterpiece nevertheless. In fact, there are a lot of strange oddities when it comes to Mars Attacks, such as its weird obsession with donuts. The fact that it came out in the wake of a serious alien invasion movie, which also just so happens to be the biggest movie of that year, as well as the movie's finale, which ends with Tom Jones looking like some kind of messiah. Yeah, Tom Jones. But nowhere do things get any more crazier than the controversy of those damn burning cows. Oh god, those cows. So today we are going to explore the misunderstood but brilliant Mars Attacks by looking into even more things that you didn't know about this movie. So get ready to chow down on some donuts while saying, oh look, there's a very young Jack Black, as we check it out. The story of Mars Attacks starts off at the most unlikeliest of places, a gift store. It was the mid-90s, and British writer Jonathan Gems was looking for a birthday present for his friend Tim Burton. Gems is mainly known for theatre plays, but he had dabbled in movies, as he had previously done uncredited script work on Burton's Batman movie, and was working with Burton on a script for the ill-fated Beetlejuice sequel, Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian. So anyway, Tim Burton's birthday. Gems visits a gift store to try and find a present for Burton. What he finds are two complete collections of trading cards, one being the Mars Attacks trading cards, and the other being its spin-off series, Dinosaurs Attacks. The Mars Attacks cards were released by Topps Trading Cards all the way back in 1962, and were meant to be a reflection of the real Cold War paranoia of that time, with each card depicting scenes of a Martian invasion of Earth, often showcasing violent, gruesome scenarios. So naturally the kids of that time loved them, but due to complaints about the violent nature of the cards, the Mars Attacks series of cards came to a stop, all in the name of morality and decency, because heaven forbid won't someone think of the children. The Dinosaurs Attacks cards came much later, all the way back in 1988, once again showcasing violence and gore, but this time the cards were meant to be more of a retro homage to the Mars Attacks cards, which would have been nostalgic by that time. This time the action revolves around dinosaurs from the past who arrive in present day due to a scientific time-travelling experiment gone wrong. Man, I'm telling you, those scientists, they don't know what they're doing. Jonathan Gems gifted Burton with both sets of cards, and I guess a spark was lit in Burton's head to make a fantastical disaster movie based on these cards. The reason the comedy element came to be is because, according to Gems, in an online article called The Oral History of Mars Attacks, Tim Burton's Misunderstood Sci-Fi Masterpiece on the website inverse.com, he and Burton saw the towering inferno while stoned, and realised that the movie is actually really funny if you watch it high. So Burton and Gems had their sights set on making a movie. That movie, of course, being a Dinosaurs Attacks movie, which would have seen dinosaurs arriving in modern-day Los Angeles. But they found out that Steven Spielberg was making a sequel to Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, and that they just couldn't compete against that, or the original Jurassic Park for that matter. So instead they focused on Mars Attacks. The movie idea was pitched to Warner Brothers. Now this may have seemed like a gamble, as Mars Attacks had previously gone into production with Orion Pictures and TriStar during the 80s, but the production failed and collapsed. Despite this, Warner Brothers still purchased the rights from Topps Trading Cards, and Mars Attacks was officially in production. So Jonathan Gems would go on to start working on the script, or rather, scripts of Mars Attacks, all while Burton was off making Edward. But it does seem like there was a disconnect between the creative pairing of Gems and Burton and Warner Brothers. The price required to make the first draft of the script was estimated to have cost $240 million, but Warner Brothers wanted a script that could be made for no less than $60 million, so that original script must have been pretty ambitious. So Gems would go on to work on more and more drafts of Mars Attacks. However, one thing that seemed to really piss Warner Brothers off the most was a sequence at the start of the movie where a heap of cows are on fire. This made Warner Brothers nervous, out of fear of animal cruelty complaints. And with each new draft that was handed in, the studio kept telling Gems to leave out the scene with the burning cows. Like, they really did not want this scene in the movie. According to Gems, by the time he handed in the 11th draft, the studio were like, why are the burning cows still in the movie? Despite Gems telling them that they weren't real cows. The studio made it clear and told Gems that if the burning cows feature in the next script, he will be fired. Spoilers, the 12th script did still feature the burning cows, and so like those cows, Gems was fired. But his defiance seemed to have paid off, as despite all the protests from the studio, it did remarkably feature in the final film. And so writers Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski were brought in to make rewrites, as they had previously worked with Burton on Edward. And things must have been pretty hectic behind the scenes. As Alexander puts it, Burton was just scrambling to keep the movie alive, which to me kind of indicates that the movie could have been scrapped at any time. Alexander also stated that the original script was a lot darker, followed by saying, quote, some of the characters were crackheads, a lot of the female characters were strippers and drug addicts, end quote. He followed up by saying that if Independence Day is being made at the same time in another studio, which was a serious movie, then this version should be fun. However, interestingly, Gems claims the opposite. According to Wikipedia, Gems felt that Alexander and Karaszewski took a lot of the satire out of the story, and that the ending was very similar to Independence Day. Also, according to Gems, the studio just couldn't figure out what Mars Attacks was all about. They thought it was a straight-up science fiction movie, where Martians attack and a hero comes to save the day. And he also felt that that's the approach that Alexander and Karaszewski took. I guess kind of implying that Warner Brothers didn't catch on that Burton and Gems were making a satirical disaster movie, one that's a callback to 1950s B science fiction films. Look, who knows, at this stage it's all a case of he said. Regardless, there was immense pressure to reach a deadline and for the script to be completed, and another issue Warner's had was the lack of an understandable dialogue from the aliens. They wanted subtitles, or for the Martians to talk in some capacity. This is where the dialogue comes from. Larry Karaszewski would go on to say that his and Alexander's biggest input to the script was the ack dialogue. So if you can believe it, Jonathan Gems was rehired yet again to work on the script along with Burton helping to co-write. And a great deal had to be cut out of the script for budgetary reasons. The main cast of characters originally consisted of 60 people, but it had to be cut down to 23, as well as certain scenes also having to be cut out in order to try and keep the budget down, which included scenes like the Martians attacking China, Russia, Japan, and Africa, as well as scenes of the Empire State Building and the White House being destroyed by the Martians. A scene that was actually written up before anyone in the production knew anything about Independence Day. But just imagine if Mars Attacks had 60 characters. That would have been really disorientating and really difficult to keep up with. That's more like something you would write for a TV show consisting of like 20 odd episodes. In fact, there was so much in the original script, Scott Alexander claims that when he took over writing duties, Jonathan Gem's script had an index, which he had never seen in a script before. Then there's the cast. Considering many famous faces show up in Mars Attacks, you would think the movie would have had a big budget. But after the cost of the special effects, the production only had about $28 million to play with. But thankfully, most of the cast starred in the movie because they wanted to work with Tim Burton. Well, that's according to casting director Matthew Barry anyway. In order to get the movie greenlit, one major star was needed for the main role of President James Dale. Both Michael Douglas and Harrison Ford were considered, but were unavailable. Burton really wanted Jack Nicholson, and thankfully he agreed to do it. He was the highest paid out of all the cast, with his fee consisting of $100,000 a week, which is actually insanely low for Nicholson, but by accounts he was treated very well. During the filming, he stayed in a penthouse in Las Vegas, and only had a 10-hour limit to his working day, and apparently would finish the workdays by playing golf. I mean, what else are you gonna do? Interestingly, the very first day of filming was in fact the scene where Jack Nicholson yells, "Shut up!"
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
By accounts, it seemed that most of the cast and crew had an absolute blast making Mars Attacks. Visual effects artist David Drescher said that his favourite part of making the movie was being on the Tom Jones set, which was actually a real bar, and that everyone was drinking and having a grand old time watching Jones sing It's Not Unusual. Makeup artist Valerie O'Reilly further claimed that Jones entered the makeup bus and was singing and dancing for everyone and gave them all CDs to give to their mothers. Jack Nicholson himself got into the good spirit of things and would have Hail to the Chief played every time he walked on the set as the president. And Tim Burton would go on to say that it was a strange and fun film to make. And so with filming lasting for 6 weeks in Las Vegas, it sounds like Mars Attacks was a hoot to film. Well, at least for some it was anyway. When it came to bringing the Martians themselves to life on the screen, Burton originally wanted them to be stop-motion animation, an effect style that he had previously used for Beetlejuice and The Nightmare Before Christmas. And stop motion would also keep in alignment with the 1950s B-movie aesthetic of the film. And so miniature sets and puppets were being made, with sculptors from England even being hired to work on the film. However, the studio panicked and thought that it would cost too much. But Burton was supposedly adamant that it was stop motion or nothing. And so Mars Attacks production came to a complete stop. Simply put, Burton didn't want to use CGI, and the studio didn't want stop motion. It seems like no one was winning this battle. So that there could have been the end of Mars Attacks. Thankfully, special effects team Industrial Light and Magic put some test footage together of Martians trying to lift up a Volkswagen. Interesting choice, but sure. Thankfully, that was enough to get Burton on board for CGI, and so thankfully the production was back on track. Burning cows and all. Once the filming and post-production was complete and the movie was gearing up to be released, Gems went to some screen tests, and it seemed that the audience absolutely loved it, stating everyone went completely berserk. However, when the movie was actually released, now that was a whole other story. Supposedly, at the premiere, no one laughed during the movie, as if there was a disconnect between Mars Attacks and the audience. Well, that's according to actress Olan Jones, who had a supporting role in the movie. Mars Attacks was a financial dud in the US market, with the whole experience leaving Burton feeling misplaced, with Gems claiming that Burton was a wreck after filming, and after the whole fiasco and failure of the film, he retreated to India for a month. Gems also believed that the film wasn't marketed properly, feeling as though the powers that be didn't want people to see the film. However, Mars Attacks did much better overseas, with Burton claiming that it's as if the overseas audience got it. And this gets me thinking, part of the gag of Mars Attacks is all these people in authority like the government, scientists, and even the President of the United States himself are shown to be complete idiots and completely incompetent. And that it's actually the underdog characters who save the day. And Tom Jones. Maybe back then, US audiences didn't want to see their government and president as buffoons, and wanted a more heroic president who fights aliens and saves the day, just like Independence Day. And thus, back then, no one got the joke. But that's a guess. And if that is true, I mean, you can't really blame America. Back in the good old days of the 90s, where everyone wanted to kick ass, I don't think anyone wanted to see their country get destroyed and run by complete morons. So it's understandable. I think the comedy in Mars Attacks is more surreal than your usual comedy. It's a satire on disaster movie tropes of the 70s, while also satirizing action spectacle movies of the 90s, along with homages to 1950s B-movies. Maybe this concoction of movie ingredients didn't work in the 90s, or people were just unsure of it at the time. But, as time has gone by, this is a concoction that people have grown to love, with Mars Attacks now having a huge fan base. An achievement that is truly deserved. Now let's not forget that according to writer Jonathan Gems, Mars Attacks kind of came to be thanks to himself and Burton watching the towering inferno while high and finding it all very funny. Maybe that's how we're meant to observe Mars Attacks. Not high, but like an obscure, wacky alien invasion fever dream that's not of articulate sound of mind, but just a bizarre, visually stunning Looney Tunes style alien invasion romp. And maybe that itself is the joke. And personally, I think the sight of the President and First Lady watching TV while eating their TV dinners is just comedy genius. Either way, Mars Attacks happened, and I'm damn glad it exists, as I absolutely love this movie, and it seems that many others do too. Rock on, Mars Attacks. I think it's the oddball characters and the way they act and observe the situation that is the true genius of Mars Attacks. And I think that part of the gag is that you have these important people who are in charge, who are also complete idiots and oblivious to the situation at hand. No matter what, they're still going to try and insist that they have complete control and the Martians are absolutely fine. That's why the most well-adjusted character with the most common sense in Mars Attacks is General Decker. And yet it's everyone else who acts like he's the nutty one who's completely out of touch, proving that you can't win in a room full of idiots. So well done to Gems and Burton for creating such a fantastic, memorable movie. Anyway, I'm Minty, and say what you want to say about Mars Attacks, there really is no other movie like it. See ya!